Hey everyone, well it's part two of the Font Police, or maybe we should call this the Bride of Font Police. In the first video we talked about fonts to avoid, fonts not to use. And in this episode I thought we would talk about finessing your copy, or tightening it up to make it look nice. Now the number one thing I could tell you for some advice of what to do is to pay close attention to other designers and what they do. You know, if you're looking at ads or a magazine or billboards or brochures or whatever, take a very close look at how they treated their copy. You know, the point size and how they broke the copy, headline treatment, subheads, you know, maybe a photo has text underneath. See how they did that and where they placed it. I remember one time I had an assignment where I was to redesign the interior of a local magazine around here. So what I did was I went to my local library and I checked out a lot of issues of old magazines. I just went to the rack and just picked every single one, regardless of the subject. And then I just came home with this giant stack of magazines, and I looked through them. And, you know, like I said, I looked at the font treatment, the headline treatment, and how it actually ended up was the final result was a combination of Cooking Light magazine and Field and Stream of all magazines. So it was just sort of like this morph of the two, you know, magazines. You know, I cherry-picked the headline treatment here and a body copy there. So like I said, you know, when you're out looking, don't pay attention to what it is. Maybe it's a magazine you've never looked at before. Well, pick it up anyway, because there are talented designers working all over this field, and they have a lot of good stuff to look at. So to get started on this, the first thing we should talk about is kerning. Now, kerning, if you don't know, is the space in between the letters of a font. Okay. Now, here's an example. This is Lucidia Console. Now, most fonts, when they're in the body copy size, you know, like 10, 12 points, the spacing in between the letters, it's fine. But once you blow it up to headline size, and that's when all the spacing starts to go out of whack. It depends on the font. Some do, some don't, but a lot of times it'll happen. I just want to show you this example here. Now, here's the untreated kind. I just typed it in. Now look at the spacing here compared to here. Look how wide that is. I mean, you could drive a truck in between these letters. And plus, this word is way over here. So what I did was I kept this space. I was comfortable with that, but I went in and I tightened up the kerning in between these letters. You know, brought it all in a bit. Then I took this word too and scooted it over, just so it looked like a phrase. So it looked solid. You know, it's a phrase, not just two words floating. And I tightened the whole thing up, and it looks better this way. The second example here was quite a shock. This is Mrs. Eves, which is quite a popular font, and you know, it's produced by a larger font foundry. And again, I just typed this in, and look at the space after the apostrophe. And look at this, the R and Y are crashing. Okay, crashing is a term where two things touch each other or overlap. So what I did was I just went in and tightened that up in here, and then I spread that out a bit, and now it's readable. The second thing I want to talk about is breaking copy, especially on what's called right rag columns. Right rag is when this side, the right side of the column, is jagged. It's, you know, this is flush, and if it was justified, it would be straight down, sort of like a magazine do that, or a newspaper. It'll be, but this is right rag. And what happens a lot of times is you get weird holes in here. Okay, see this giant hole, and down here it looks kind of funky. So I took the same copy on this side, and I added a couple of hyphens here and there, but I just rebroke the copy. What I mean by rebreaking is I take a word from the top column and move it back down to the bottom. So as you can see here, it's nice and it's not flush, but it's certainly a lot better than this. This looks like someone just sort of ripped it. Another problem with this is down here, a widow. A widow is a lone word at the bottom of a paragraph, which is something you should avoid. And with this case, I just dropped the word down, another word down here, so it's not so lonely. The other thing which gets overlooked a lot, looked over a lot, is what's called the space after. Okay, now here's a little headline with some copy afterward, and this space in here, that's a paragraph break. That's the same width as the line below it, and that's a lot of space in there. Now here, what I did is there is no paragraph break in between here. It's all together. But in programs like InDesign and Quark, you click on this, this line, and you can specify what's called space after, and you're telling the program how much space to put after here, and you can type in any amount you want, and it goes in either points or regular just measurement sizes. And here I think it's like 0.125 after, and you can make it a little bit. You can nudge this column up or push it down below. So when you say space after, it's that space, but it's also pushing or pulling the copy below it. This is especially helpful if you're trying to pack a lot of copy into a space and you run out of room. Is what you can do is go back in between the paragraphs and tighten that up a bit. And sometimes it's not even noticeable, but it's just enough to give you some space, because sometimes you may just need one line. That always happens, is you just need one more line and it just doesn't fit. The last thing I don't have an example for is quote marks and foot marks. Quote marks are the curly Q's or the apostrophe. You'll see this all the time in, say, like Gary's. It should be apostrophe, a curly Q quote S. Sometimes people will put in a foot mark, which is the straight up and down, and that's incorrect. That should just be used for feet. It's one of my pet peeves. I always see that in like billboards for some reason, and I'm driving along and I see that. Most people won't catch that, but the people who do will catch that is art directors and creative directors. And if you remember from our conversation in the last video, sometime soon you're going to be in an interview, and the person interviewing you, the art director, is going to be looking at your copy and how you treat it and the finesse that you get. So again, if he goes in there and sees a foot mark instead of quote marks, and jaggedy weird column breaks and widows all over the place, those are going to be red flags that's going to be thrown up. But if that's something you're conscious of and look at, that's something that they will know. I mean, they may not say it like, "Oh, nice job with the copy," but they'll notice how you treat the copy. So again, take a second look at your work, grab lots of samples, look at other examples that other designers do, and you'll be fine. All right, thanks. Hope this helps.